Hi, this is Chuck at Lazarus Recovery Podcast at the junction of faith and recovery. This is the episode, but this is episode want versus need. I've been off air for a while, been displaced from our place of residence, recording in a basement right now. We'll continue on. I don't know what the episode number is. This is Lazarus Recovery Podcast, the junction of faith and recovery. And the subject is need versus want. This has come up from, several conversations and meetings I've been to and conversations I've had. You get what you need, not what you want. Personally, in our life, I found myself getting sober 48 years ago. My mantra during that time, didn't even know what a mantra was, but my mantra was, you got what you need, not what you want. You get what you need, not what you want. It's an interesting thing that I want to talk about. The whole idea of need and want and what it's about and how it translates into recovery. And perhaps the best way to do that is to go into my history with getting sober. I'm going to sort of go there and talk to you about my history of getting sober. That's what I'm going to do right now. I got sober 48 years ago. My sobriety is in November of 74. And as I got sober, I had to deal with the pains of recovery. Recovery is not an easy operation. It's full of discomfort and anxiety and pain and repercussions from stuff I've done. And I was not comfortable when I got sober. I was anxious. I was nervous. My nerves were shot. I was in sort of detox from my drinking. And I just was not comfortable. As I went sober and I went to meetings and stuff like that, I realized that you got to have a way to adapt to, just not feeling altogether well, or at least emotionally well. I was anxious. The only place I was feeling really comfortable was in an AA meeting where I was distracted and I was listening. So it was a difficult time for me. So from somewhere I realized, instead of worrying about what was going on, I just simply said all of them like, you get what you need, not what you want. You get what you need, not what you want. You get what you need, not what you want. And the funny thing is, I didn't realize it at the time, but it's a faith argument. It's an argument that God will give you what you need, but not necessarily what you want. Now, why is that? Why can you come up with that premise that you're going to get what you need, not what you want? Well, the problem with it is that as I was getting sober, I realized that I had a very flawed and imperfect wanter. And the more I got sober and cleared up, the more I realized what I wanted wasn't necessarily good for me all the time. Hence came, you get what you need, not what you want. It's a declaration of faith that if I put my trust in God, He will give me what I need, not what I want. Now, what do I mean by that? What's the big deal? What do I mean by you get what you need, not what you want? Well, let's talk about the wanter. That was a key thing. I didn't want to feel pain at all. That was obvious. I didn't want to feel pain at all. I did not want to feel pain. I wanted to not feel pain, but what else did I want? I wanted to feel pleasure all the time. I wanted to be calm all the time. I wanted not to have to do all the things I had to do to stay sober. I wanted not to face my issues. I wanted to not have to do the steps. I wanted not to have to do all the recovery stuff. I just wanted everything to change. I wanted to change spontaneously, like a virgin birth, like a virgin thing. I wanted virgin sobriety. I wanted maturity without pain, and maturity without working the steps. I wanted perfect recovery. I didn't get perfect recovery. Perfect recovery was to automatically get better just by staying sober or not doing what they suggested. I wanted some sort of immaculate conception. And I realized that. I started to realize that I wanted the greatest, simplest, magnificent recovery at no cost to me. I wanted recovery without taking a suggestion. I wanted recovery without doing the work. I wanted recovery without going to meetings. I basically wanted to get, forgive me, shit-faced and not pay the price. I wanted an alcoholic's, dream. Recovery without pain. I wanted everything a drunk wants. I basically wanted to drink without consequence. I wanted progress without perspiration. I wanted all these stuff. I wanted, like in early sobriety, I wanted the recovery relationship without the pain. I wanted the job without nervousness. I wanted the girlfriend without preparation. I wanted all sorts of things. I wanted recovery without any work at all. In other words, I wanted recovery that allowed me to feel like I was messed up, that I was getting drunk without getting drunk. I certainly didn't want to work the steps. I didn't want to do any work. I didn't want to perspire any. I wanted things that were completely, absolutely impractical in reality. And so, when I faced my getting sober times and they told me what I had to do, I knew in my heart that I didn't want that. But I didn't want to die. So I had to come to think. That's where I came. I get what I need, not what I want. I had to trust that the God of my understanding would give me what I needed, not necessarily what I wanted. And that's the way it worked. That was the foundation of my recovery. You get what you need, not what you want. Now, what does that mean in spiritual terms? What does that mean in all sorts of other ways? It's strange, but faith is the foundation of recovery, but the foundation of a life in Jesus too. You got to believe that He is, and He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. That's salvation. That's faith in Jesus is the foundation of salvation. In other words, you believe that He is, and He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him, and you believe that faith in His death, burial, and resurrection is the keys to forgiveness. That's a long reach. That's a long reach. And you also have to be willing to follow Him and obey Him. That's a farther reach. Because following Him and obeying Him is almost pretty contrary to what you want. And you have to come to grips with that. You have to come to grips with that. You have to come to grips with the fact that following Jesus is going to, in obedience, lead you to places you don't want to go. That is the name of salvation. That is the stumbling block. When I was coming to grips with getting saved, I realized, I didn't have the words for it, but I realized I was going to get what I need and not what I wanted. That I could have life with Him and forgiveness for everything and peace with Him, who was going to inevitably call the balls and strikes on me. But that required willingness to do Not necessarily by what I wanted, but what I needed. Salvation is about getting what you need and not what you want. Sobriety is getting what you need and not what you want. And you say, Chuck, if I don't want it, I don't do it. I completely get it. I get it completely. But there's a problem with that. If you don't do what you need to do, there is no chance at all you're even remotely going to get what you want. You might want what you want temporarily, but you're definitely not going to get what you need. What you need is safety in Jesus. You need sobriety. You need something. And you're not going to get it with an attitude of, I want to get what I want at all costs, and I'm not going to surrender myself to faith in Jesus and allowing Him to order my steps. It's not going to happen. It's just simply not going to happen. You get what you need, not what you want. So in a lot of ways, in a spiritual sense, the spiritual walk, especially in Jesus, is you get what you need, not what you want. And that's a declaration of faith. A declaration of faith is, despite what I suspect, what I worry about and suspect, God is going to give me what I need if I do things that I don't want to do. That's the whole. If you're looking for a key to sobriety, it's a lot there. You've got to decide to go another way than accept the way you were doing before. And chances are, you're like me, you were picking the next best want you had, applying all your efforts to get the want, even though it became perfectly obvious that you were incapable of getting what you want, or figuring out what it was, or figuring out whether it was good for you, and getting it to stay. You were not able to figure out what you wanted. It didn't work. And if you're listening to me, you know it. I know you know it. You hate my guts for it, but you know it. You can't get, your wanter doesn't want the right things. And your heart needs something. Your heart needs Jesus. Your heart needs safety. Your heart needs acceptance. Your heart needs the power to get your willful self to move in the right direction. Your heart needs help from a higher power, a Jesus, to get you where you can't get to yourself. So you get what you need, not what you want. And that's in the basics. That's in the absolute basics. Now you're saying, well, where does that get me further on? It gets you where you need, not what you want. As you get sober, you want all sorts of things that you're going to discover you're not fixed up to get. You're gonna, as you get sober, you want peace in your life. You're probably not going to get peace. You want to make good decisions, which you have a record of not making. Also, you want that recovery relationship, which probably is not what you need, but it's what you want. You want the perfect recovery relationship. But you can't if you're honest with yourself. If you're honest with yourself and you look at what you want in a recovery relationship, you're honest with yourself. What you want in a recovery relationship is to, forgive me, cat around like you did when you're using without consequence. Sobriety doesn't work. Cleanness doesn't work that way. Recovery doesn't work that. Reality works in those recovery relationships. You're finding a relationship with somebody who is incapable of having a relationship, and the only reason you want it is to have something to warm your feet and other things. Whoever you are, you're not doing what they suggest. You're doing what you want to do. And it doesn't work out well. And a lot of times I ran a sober house for 5.5 years. One of my house managers got tangled up in a recovery relationship. And it was so crazy, and most of them are, that he picked up and completely messed up a lot of pieces of his life. I mean, he got clean pretty quick again, but it cost him, and he had to struggle through, and it worked out okay for him. But it did not work. A recovery relationship early is not good, but what is it? You're going for what you want and not what you need. A prime example. Early sobriety has tons of those prime examples. You can't go on your wants, and you got to trust God will provide the needs. A lot of times in early recovery, we want recovery without faith. And we want faith that we name ourselves. We want the epitome of AA faith, God as I understand Him. The trouble with it is that God isn't necessarily how you understand Him. He is what He is. He is what He is, and He is who He says it is. And who He says He is, and what He believes in, and how He runs His universe is a lot of times not what we want. But it is what we need. So if you're saying, well, AA says I can name my higher power, it works because He's generous and gracious. But if you demand that it stay that way, you're going to get hijacked. And there's plenty of other spiritual forces that'll gladly hook their wagon to you and take you off into the boondocks someplace. The spiritual part about it is you have to understand that God only gives you what you need, and usually a lot of times is not what you want right away, especially for recovery people. Recovery people, I go to meetings and I go to AA, I got saved and stuff like that. And if you talk about Jesus in an AA meeting or an NA meeting, in a secular meeting, you're going to get a lot of grief because nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Why don't they want to hear that? Why? I'm just asking you, why don't they want to hear that? Why? Because it is definitely not what they want, and they refuse to believe it's what they need. I mean, everybody knows. You follow Jesus, things change. He helps you change, but you're called to change. You're called to make different choices. Generally, you're called to make choices that you don't want to make. That's why you prefer secular recovery, because you can name the higher power of your choice. The problem with it is there are higher powers that will do what you want and not what you need. There are animals in the wild kingdom that will do what you want and not what you need. The trouble with it is the end is they eat you. You're going to do what they want rather than what you need. In the end, they're going to eat you. They're going to eat you whole, or they're going to bind you so tight you can't get away unless you call for Jesus. That's just the simple fact of the matter here. That's why you get what you need, not what you want. If you put your cart on somebody who can take care of you, and that somebody's Jesus. Sorry about that. Now, why don't you want to come to Jesus? Because and you want to define your higher power so you can get what you want first. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. You turn to Jesus, and you turn your life and your will over to care of Jesus, then he will give you what you need, not what you want. And I assure you, a lot of it or some of it is not what you want, but it's definitely what you need. What do you say? What do you mean, Chuck? Read the Bible. Read the Bible, or ask somebody to help you read the Bible. I talk about it in my podcast. We'll go over it. But you got to sort of come to grips with the fact that you get what you need, not what you want. If you follow Jesus, you get what you need, not what you want. There's going to be some stuff you're not going to like. There's going to be some stuff that takes away, quote, your freedom. It's just like animal in Africa. If they don't want to get held in a protective pen, they want to be free, obviously. But the problem with it is, if they're not in a protective pen, they're going to get eaten. So it's sort of that way too. We don't know how to protect ourselves. We don't know anything about how to protect ourselves. You get what you need, not what you want. So a lot of times, the spiritual solution is not what we want to hear, but it's what we need to do. I mean, it's a sort of axiom of recovery is you get what you need, not what you want. So a lot of times, if you think about it, you want everything the meetings tell you not to do. Meetings tell you got to go to meetings. You don't want to go to meetings. The meetings tell you that, stay away from a relationship at least for the first year. You don't want to do that. You want to get into that relationship with the sickest person in the room as absolute soon as possible. You want to do a little PDA in the meetings as soon as possible. But you don't want to have the consequences of people who do that. You don't want to be the topic of conversation about why you went out and you were dead. But you want what you don't need, and it does not work. You got to let go of what you want for a while and get what you need. And a lot of times, a lot of that is a bunch of stuff you just don't want to do. And faith in Jesus is absolutely the top of the list. I mean, you'll trade in Jesus for any secondary higher power you can think of, because you think it's faith. Spiritual shopping is like shopping for a car. You get the best deal. Trust me, the devil gives really good deals. It's just they're all baloney. They're not true. He'll sell you a lemon every time. Not a lemon that's just a lemon. He sells you a lemon that's going to kill you. It's going to eat you alive forever. So you get what you need, not what you want. So I'd encourage you. I'll talk more about it. That's what I do in a podcast. Talk about all the spiritual ramifications of all this. But what my suggestion is, after 48 years of sobriety, go to meetings, do what they say, avoid what they say to avoid. And one more thing, secular meetings, whatever, church, whatever. As you're picking a higher power, just ask Jesus to show you who he is. Simple prayer. Hey, Jesus, here you're around. I don't know. I don't want to do what you want me to do. But if you're Jesus and you're who you say you are, please show me who you are. Persuade me, please. By the Holy Spirit, by whatever, show me you're real and that you have peace for me. Maybe not what I want, but what I need. And then come back. Send me a message. Send me a message me, do something, and tell me what it was. Tell me the response to it, because generally speaking, if a person reaches out to Jesus, he will reach back. He won't tell you what you want to hear, but he'll tell you what you need to hear. And then come back to me and say, hey, Chuck, I don't like what I'm hearing, but I need what I'm hearing. You do that. Podcast, we'll talk more about getting what you need and not what you want, and all the different stuff about recovery. Recovery is a journey, a fantastic adventure, but it has a lot of painful choices, a lot of hurt that you get when you do what you're supposed to do. But in the end, you get what you need, not what you want. This is Chuck at Last Recovery Podcast at the junction of faith and recovery. I wish you the blessings of the Lord, and trust me, Jesus never fails, but he doesn't necessarily give you what you want, but he is everything you need. Thank you. This is Chuck at Last Recovery Podcast at the junction of faith and recovery. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.